even though not everybody's here yet. So a few more minutes. Hi, John.
Hi, Nancy. Pleasure to hear your voice.
Yes.
Hi, everyone else. I will read myself.
John, is your last name, do you say Peters or Petters?
What do you think?
I would say Peters, but I might be wrong.
It's Petters.
Petters, okay. Should be two E's. Okay, good.
Peters, it's pretty much like 1 out of 20 people says my name right. So it's funny. When you read it fast and you see Peters.
Yeah.
That's a common name. So,
yeah.
But,
yeah.
How do you say your last name? Let me try it.
Okay.
Oh my God.
It's just parse it out.
Oh,
yeah, there you go. See? That's not so bad.
Putting on my arms in exhilaration.
Yeah, okay. Good.
Now I'll go back to
Nancy, I must say, knowing you earlier on and have the opportunity to hear you say your last name, it's kind of like my secret kind of pride that when people say, how do you say Nancy's last name? I can be like, I know.
Yeah, it's not too bad once you do the vowels, parse it that way. But yeah, it's a little intimidating at first. So I see Raleigh is on. Hello, Raleigh.
Hello.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm well, thank you. Sun shining.
Thanks for inviting me on board. For this
sure,
meeting.
sure. I was glad to have you all here. So let's wait a couple more minutes. Hoping to get Matt Mayernick should be coming, I think, for a few minutes, at least half an hour, from the the working group. And who knows, Shelley Stahl is supposed to be joining. We'll see who else comes on. Just give it a minute or two. I am recording the meeting, so we will, just so you know. Hello, is that Heather? Heather Brown? I saw caller 02.
Yeah, that's fine.
That's all right. Welcome. Nancy. I'm Nancy Hobel-Heinrich. We're just waiting for a few minutes till we get more people coming on.
Okay.
Yeah. Sophie, do you know if Matt is planning to come?
I don't know. I talked with him yesterday, and it sounded like he knows all the same meetings that he and I are going to be in together. But things might happen.
Yeah, he said something to me or sent a note yesterday, but yeah, something could definitely happen. So we'll just give it another few seconds and then go ahead and get started in the honor of people being here on time and our full agenda. So
yeah, sorry, I'm just checking his schedule again. He has an overlapping meeting. So
that's what's going on. Okay. Sounds good. All right. Well, why don't we go ahead and get started? I assume Shelley Stahl will probably join at some time as well. So, can everybody see the agenda, the draft agenda I've got here up on the screen?
Yeah.
Okay. So, what I'll cover very briefly in the first part here is just, although I think, given the fact that everybody who is on the call other than Sophie is probably not that familiar with what we're doing. I'll just very briefly mention that we're going to be at the AGU help desk and data fair doing a couple of things related to the Clearinghouse, the data management training Clearinghouse, including demos and workshops, and then doing a little bit of usability testing for researchers, of researchers, since that's our primary audience there. And so if you're going to be there, do stop by, because it'll be a chance to look at the Clearinghouse, and if you're game to do some testing with you all as researchers or interested party at any rate. And then the data fair is on Wednesday, the capacity building. There's a panel discussion of a number of people, and I'm going to be talking about the Clearinghouse there for a few minutes. And then ESIP Winter is the meeting that happens once every 6 months. We have meetings twice a year, and this one is in Bethesda, Maryland, usually in the East Coast. So at that session, we're going to be moving forward with a number of things we've been intending to do for a while, and that is to work on governance of the Clearinghouse. So that might be of interest to people. We have submitted a 2-page preliminary proposal to the IMLS for a grant, which we've been invited. Now, we just learned this week we've been invited to move forward on that. So that is that's sort of a motivator to work on governance with either advisory board or probably both an advisory board and maybe a review and editorial board to help with making some decisions about what kinds of things should go into the Clearinghouse, and to kind of round up different domain specialists so they can make the metadata that's there of good quality and current, and also really broaden the range of resources that are there. So that's something that also might be of interest to this group, this part of the TAG group, and we can talk about what that might mean a little bit later. Then the other sessions that we've got are working on an assessment framework for the resources that are in the Clearinghouse, and then we've been working with the National Science Foundation Science Gateway Community Institute to see about making the Clearinghouse more than a registry, and adding other services that would be associated with it to create a science gateway for data education. So to sort of, again, broaden what we're doing a little bit, and that also ties into what we're thinking of doing with IMLS. So even regardless of whether we get the IMLS grant or not, we're interested in moving that forward. So that's the short news on ESIP Winter, and all those sessions are going to be remote, allow remote participation in addition to face-to-face. So if you're interested, we can talk about that, offline or during that call, whatever works there. And then finally, the grant proposal, the only thing to say there is that it's due January 16th. So we know what we're doing when we're not unwrapping presents or wrapping presents or whatever we're doing for the holidays. So then finally, the only other thing I want to mention, again, to people who are here, we've been working on enhancements to the Clearinghouse, and have including a number of things to make like automated link checking. We're adding different kinds of search mechanisms and that sort of thing. And again, we can talk about that in more detail if people want. But just wanted to let you know that that's what's going on. So any quick questions about anything there? Okay, great. Well then,
Nancy?
Yeah.
Sorry, just a quick question. So since ESIP Winter meeting is following the January in-person meeting for the AGU stakeholders, I'm just curious if people on the call already know that they will be there for the AGU in-person meeting?
The AGU in-person meeting?
Yeah, the AGU in-person meeting is supposed to take place that Monday, I believe, or sorry, that Sunday, the 7th. And then I was just curious if anybody's going to be there, and then in person, and then, if they're there and you're already there, it might be a good opportunity to meet with people in person. Just a thought.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Are people going to be present for that?
Sorry, could you tell us about this meeting? I don't know if it's relevant to the new participants in the call, but I'm just interested to know.
Yeah. So Sophie, do you want to talk a little more about it? Because I don't actually know about it either.
Oh, okay. I thought most of the people who are on this call have been to the in-person meeting about 3 weeks ago now. So on November 15th and 16th, the Enabling Fair Data project had convened in person in Washington, D.C. And a lot of people were there in person to talk about what the project is about, and then as a result, creating these different tag groups. And then as part of the milestone or check-in, or I think Shelly would have called it the tag up, using the playing a pun of the tag group, we are doing these regular virtual meetings, but she's also scheduled in 2 in-person meetings. And so one of which will be will be co-locating with East of Winter, and that will take place that Sunday, January 7th, as I mentioned. And then so people who are also going to East of Winter might be able to stay and so forth. The idea is that Shelly is able to get more people to participate or be able to take the advantage of the fact that meeting and do in-person meeting with a lot more participants. And then the second meeting that she scheduled is going to be co-located with the Research Data Alliance plenary, the 11th plenary at Berlin. And so that's about, I think, early March time. And so that's the second in-person meeting that she has scheduled for the project. And then that's going to be the last in-person meeting before May, when all the deliverables need to be provided for the project. So that's the meeting. Yeah, so the January meeting is the second in-person meeting that I was referring to, and I was wondering whether or not people from this group is considering going to that meeting. And so I think I only recall seeing John there at the November meeting, but again, sorry, I could be wrong. So that's why I was wondering if anybody else would be there.
So the meeting in January is associated with ESIP. So it's in Bethesda, not at AGU. I heard you say AGU
That's
first.
Correct.
So it's at ESIP.
Oh, I'm
okay.
Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah.
So all right. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so just to clarify, the first meeting then is the initial kickoff that AGU sponsored November 15th to 16th in Alexandria, Virginia. The second in-person meeting is this one on the January 7th before ESIP. And then the third one would be early March, sometime before RDA or after RDA.
I believe the plan is for the meeting to be before RDA, but that's correct. Your summary is
okay.
Right on.
Well, yeah, thanks for sharing that. I didn't actually realize there was an in-person meeting on the 7th. So that's good to know about.
Yeah, I didn't either. So if it's in the mail, I missed it.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It's quite possible I heard about it and it didn't register.
Okay.
Yeah, no worries. And yeah, so we're all on the same page. That's good.
Okay. So
that's why we're meeting.
So just to get to that question then, are people planning to attend that, or did other people know about it, or do we need to? People.
Sophie, this Rowena Davis, and I'm standing in for Carrie Stelzer, and I believe she and Bob Samars of the Belmont Forum EINDM office were at that initial meeting, and she plans to be definitely there on Monday at AGU, and I think that she may attend ESIP. I will be talking to her about that, and I'll be sure to alert her about that.
Yeah, that sounds good, Rowena. I will also be at AGU, and so will Nancy next week, so we can definitely see each other in person and catch up as well. Thanks.
Yeah, I'll be going late to the meeting, but she'll definitely be there. It's definitely on her calendar, so that'll be good
Great.
for her.
Okay. Great. All right. All right. So then I think should we move on to the other agenda item then?
Yes.
Okay. Sounds good. So I think, let's see. It sounds like people are pretty familiar with the whole Enabling Fair Data project per se. Is that correct, or do people need a little bit of a background on what that is? And if so, I hope Raleigh or John can do that, or Sophie, since I wasn't at the meeting itself. Do people need any more background information on that project? Doesn't sound like it. Okay, so then we can kind of get to the meat of our discussion. I guess it would make sense given, and certainly Raleigh, jump in here, and given Sophie's explanation of different groups focusing on different aspects of the whole goal of enabling fair data, maybe it would make sense, since I gave a little bit of an introduction already about what the working group is doing, the data management training working group is doing. Well, actually, I could add one thing that would make it a little bit more clear about the relationship that could happen here. But why don't you go ahead, Raleigh, if you want to, and talk a little bit about what the Tag G focus is, and to give people context in that. Does that make sense?
Yes, I can give
Okay.
an explanation, and I apologize, this might be repetition for people who are at that November 15th, 16th meeting. But so basically, this AGU Fair effort, it's 18 months. They're trying to really spin up coordination between publishers, funders, infrastructure developers to address various obstacles to basically implementing fair data principles in the publishing ecosystem. And they brought together a lot of publishers like Nature and Science and PNAS. So big publishers, not just kind of sideline ones. And so the meeting was like very open. There were a lot of discussions, but one of the things that came out of it was to identify these key challenges and to form what they call targeted action groups, tags, around these challenges. And so the tag that I'm going to talk about today is tag G. I'm sorry, it's technical. I don't know if it's technical or targeted, whatever acronyms.
I know, I can never remember.
So this working group specifically, or action group specifically, arose around the idea of active data management plans. That is, data management plans that are, and please correct me if I'm getting this wrong for those who are there, but data management plans that are somehow machine readable or interoperable. Basically, data management plan not only as a narrative description to be reviewed, say, in a funding proposal, but as something that can actually be a working document that could, say, go from a research proposal into a data repository, could be kind of analyzed along with other data management plans. And so a group of people, I would say like 4 or 5 of us, started discussing this idea. But quickly it occurred to us that this is we're probably not the first ones to be talking about this, and there are groups within RDA and also ESEP, this particular group that's meeting right now, who are kind of working on these issues. And so the question that arose was, should we even form our own targeted action group, or should we simply kind of coordinate with all those groups that already exist and kind of figure out what our goals are and see how these different groups are helping to address those goals. So going back to the Enabling Fair effort, as Sophie mentioned, I think the next big in-person meeting will be in May. And by that time, they're hoping to have some kind of plan from each of the tag groups. And I'm not sure exactly how definite that plan needs to be, but I know they want something. That's kind of when they're looking for deliverables. So I think that's basically summary. Feel free to chime in, John or Sophie. I know, Sophie, you weren't at that particular group, but I know you connected with other people who were in that group.
Yeah, thank you, Raleigh. And I will add a little bit, just because I am officially part of the Tag B, and I believe TAG stands for Targeted Adoption Group.
Oh, okay.
That's what Shelly told me at one point, because I was trying to say Targeted Action Group, and she's like, no, it's adaptable or adoption. So I'm pretty sure the T is for targeted. But anyway, you're right. Like, yeah, it's a tag. So if people are able to go into the link that Nancy provided following the Enabling Fair Data project, on that homepage, under Open Science Framework, they actually talk about the different groups, and actually, yeah.
Do you want me to just go to that?
Component, yeah, under the stakeholder meeting tag, or not tag the link. So I'm using that to talk about it a little bit more. I'll wait until, yeah. But if you go up one, yeah, that's it. Oh, that link
Here?
that you were at.
Okay.
Yeah, perfect.
Okay.
Yeah, because on the right-hand side, I can talk about other tag groups a little bit more. So officially, I'm part of the publishers in the ESS team. Just because the publishers obviously have a lot of influence on my researchers, and as much as they personally might or might not care about data management or making their data fair, if their publishers are making rules and new policies, that would definitely be a good incentive, and that's why I'm officially in there. But I am also lurking with this group, and I also lurking with the fair resource training for research taxi. So basically what happens is that, like Riley was saying, that we have these different tag groups, but the idea is that at the end of this project, which is really short, by the time Shelley was able to convene us in November, we really have technically 5 months. And I know from these other calls that she's moderated. She really does want people to come up with implementable activities that we can demonstrate the effectiveness of the implementation as a result of this project. So for us, also just echoing what Riley was saying, that the idea is definitely that DMP is a major part of this landscape. It's really important to make sure research outputs are tracked or being considered and being planned for, and so forth. So again, I think Riley is right that Shelley hasn't said what that deliverable should look like, but I think from our context would be just what can we actually ask the repositories, the funders, or the publishers to actually do, and then be able to demonstrate what's that effect on making research products fair. So I think that's my addition. Thanks.
John, did you have anything you wanted to add to that? John Petters? Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry.
Oh, you're muted. muted.
I'm not part of this particular group, although I do data management planning consultations all the time. My job. I'll just say that the one thing I think that's important is the word adoption in this group and all these groups. I think that's one thing just to underscore the intention of taking what's already been developed and seeing that it actually gets adopted and enabled for earth and space sciences in data practices. That's really the point, more so the point than creating a bunch of new things. It's taking the things that already exist and moving them ahead and at first, and then building things as needed. But first, taking advantage of what's already been developed or is being developed. So, as Raleigh and Sophie mentioned, there's an RDA group looking and has been looking at active data management plans for a while. So, working with the other groups that exist in this particular tag and for the other ones is very important. That's all I'll say.
Okay. So is the RDA group that's working on that represented by, I mean, are there folks on this call or from who are part of the Tag G group who are also on the RDA group? I mean, you are, sounds like.
I would also use the term lurker for that particular group. I'm not super involved in that one. The main person, I'd say, the person who is one of the co-chairs for that is Stephanie Sims out in California.
Okay.
She works for CDL, and she's in charge of that group. She was also at our meeting on the 15th and 16th. So I'd say Raleigh's in that group. He can also give some other names, but that's the one I know of off the top of my head.
Okay.
Yeah, I was going to also say Stephanie Sims. She seems to be the main contact with RDA. I think maybe Natalie Myers was the other person from Notre Dame who's also involved. I forget what her level of involvement was in those other groups.
Okay.
Sorry, Nancy. I just noticed that Eric's put in a chat into the chat box.
Yeah.
I don't know if this document that you were doing is what will be forwarded to the AGU group as well. I guess Rowena is on the call, so maybe she can point to this document. But yeah, I guess just kind of thinking about syncing up with what AGU is being, or how Shelley's being moderating other groups. She does bring up the charter. I guess at some point we might as well, but then she would say, okay, making sure that we actually make additional milestones or create additional milestones as a result of that original document. I think that might be what Eric's referring to.
Well, either that, or I mean, there is an OSF project, right, that we're looking at right here on the screen. So it seems like that might be a place for those kinds of documents and events dates too. So maybe we can keep that under advisement. I think it's a great idea, but maybe we can figure out where that could be a little bit later in the call or offline. Does that sound reasonable? So that we can do a little bit more discussing about what the relationships could be, or the collaboration opportunities could be. So that's great to keep that in mind. So I guess, do people have questions? I know I have one question. I don't know if anybody else has a question based on the explanations we've gotten so far with about what the TAG G group is interested in relation to active data management plans. Anybody have questions about that right now?
Hi, this is Rowena, and I do have one question, and it's basically about the role and involvement of publishers, and I'm wondering if there's been any direct contact with the RDA publishing group as well, the one I believe it's put together by Ian H. And Nancy, if you think your last name is hard to pronounce, I'm not even going to try.
Okay. That's good. You might have to write that one into the notes, because I didn't catch that name. But yeah, it's a good question. I don't know. Anyone have an idea about that? Connecting with the RDA publishing?
And I ask that because Belmont Forum and Carrie and some of our the people that we've been working with have been actively trying to kind of put together a publishers group to address, what would it take for science publishers to adopt more fair principles and to really enable sustainable, more open access. And that seems to be an interest in this group as well. So I was wondering if there were other liaisons.
It doesn't sound like it right now, but it just certainly sounds like something that we should pursue a little bit to take this forward. I did have a question too about what kinds of mechanisms or what people mean exactly when they talk about active data management plans. I don't remember who I was talking to. They were talking about machine actionable too as being something that is part of the possibility or part of the picture, and perhaps that's what Raleigh meant when he was talking about analysis, having these plans be analyzable. That's a word. Could people talk about that a little bit? Because I want to make sure I understand, what people are talking about when they mention active DMPs.
I'll pipe up, Nancy.
Okay.
There's two parts to it as far as I know from the outside, and I'd probably be happy to hear your view on this too. But machine readable and machine actionable is one thing, so you could more easily connect a data management plan to associated data products, to proposals, to publications,
to authors.
So in a machine readable, actionable way, so that these things can be updated along the way during a project. But that's that, and I think that's actually when I hear the word active data management plans. That's, to me, the main emphasis here is to have something that's kind of a living document. So currently, with the way it's put into the proposal process, researcher writes data management plan 6 months before proposal is reviewed. Proposals accepted or not accepted, generally not accepted, right? When the proposals are awarded, researcher gets all excited and starts plowing ahead with the research and forgets about the plan they've written. They might keep some of this thoughts in mind, but the plan's where it is as far as proposal and doesn't really get used and modified and updated as the project continues, where it would be very useful if it was.
Mhm.
So if this is more machine actionable, and it's easier to make it a living document that continues to be modified as the project continues. That's kind of my view on that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, that makes sense. So that's the connection with the publishers then too. Well, let's see. That's interesting. So in terms of collaborating with what this working group is doing right now, let me give you a little bit of background on where we are right now. And this does not mean that that's where we would stay necessarily, but just to give you a context. This group has been, the working group part of it has been part of the process that ESIP uses for, having short-term actions happen with people coming together for certain, kind of products or outcomes. And when we proposed this I forgot exactly when. Oh, well, it was this budget year. You propose working groups for 2 years, and so what we suggested we would do in these 2 years is to work more with the Clearinghouse and sort of get that going, but also work on core skills for data professionals. Now, that is not to say that working with active data management plans would be exclusive of that, because I'm thinking that, for one thing, one thing that could be done within that scope, and again, there's no reason why we couldn't expand this a little bit, or maybe take it to, a data stewardship per se, which is another group that's kind of broader through ESIP. And I wish Matt were here because he's the chair of that, but those are just my thoughts at the moment. In terms of active data management plans, sounds like there's certainly an aspect of providing training and education from a number of points of view for a researcher or for data professionals who, need to, John, as you do, to provide guidance and, trying to work to make these plans actually very active. So, doing a survey of what's available in terms of educational resources would fit in, naturally into that. And that is also, to some extent, what the TAG C group is interested in doing. It seems like from my understanding, again, not having been at that meeting, but also then, if there are not resources available, then, working to make them available to train people. So that would be, again, contacting the publishers to making sure that first you have an agreement about what you actually need to do to make this happen, and then, kind of people are motivated to create resources that could then, be available for people. So that strikes me as being something, a way to work together on this. Any comments or thoughts about that? And I see Shelley's on now. Hello, Shelley. Glad you could make it.
Hi, sorry, user error.
Okay, no problem.
I had the meeting at the wrong time. Please laugh at me.
Okay. All right. Okay, done. So anyway, thank you. Anybody have any comments or thoughts about that?
So this is Raleigh. I guess one thing I would say is that in my mind, where the training and the kind of active DMPs come together is that, frankly, I think that the DMP is kind of a moving target right now. We don't really even have clarity on what it means for DMP to be active or not. I think there's a lot of different requirements across funding agencies and even within funding agencies for what needs to be in the DMP. And so I imagine, given that DMP is not well defined right now, it's difficult to kind of have a holistic training program when you don't know what you're training for.
Sure.
So I guess that is, given the focus of this group, this specific ESIP group focused on training Clearinghouse, that is maybe one point of connection. I'm not exactly sure what to do with that, but I can see how there's kind of a coevolution between the training and the kind of development of what would go into a DMP, which I think is still being determined.
Right. But again, if part of the whole idea of all of these groups is enabling fair data, and it would make sense. I guess I don't think we should necessarily limit. Let's see, how am I going to? I mean, in order to make the data management training working group, kind of successful, and the whole concept of it, of what we're trying to do, successful in the long run. I mean, it's definitely a question of trying to identify what community standards are or best practices are and should be, and that whole development, so to speak, of what the community is doing is part of the interests of these folks as well, I think, as part of this little group and then the data stewardship group as well. And Sophie can probably speak to that too, as she's a co-chair of it. But it seems to me that it would make sense to continue to work in the different venues that we've talked about with RDA Publisher, RDA Education. There's another group at RDA working on or putting in a proposal for a working group on curricula for data professionals. All of this is kind of trying to, in a way, ascertain or express what the community's sense of the best practices are related to issues of managing research data, including this focus of making the data management plans active. So, I think there's still, I don't know exactly what it means to collaborate. If it means sharing, sharing the meeting times, or sharing, sort of broadening the topics of discussion that we talk about at these data management meetings or data stewardship meetings, I think that's certainly very doable, and people are interested in doing that because we do have, those interests in common. So if part of what is happening is an exploration of, what it means to, what a data management plan is and what it means to make it active, then, it's what's needed is an opportunity to discuss those issues someplace, right? Essentially. So
yes, I think that all makes a lot of sense, and I support the idea of kind of continuing this discussion through this particular ESIP group, so long as you and the other leadership of this group are willing to do that. I don't want to kind of hijack the agenda of the group, but what you've described in terms of identifying best practices and standards that align with the kind of development of training materials and kind of the coordination of training materials, that seems like it makes a lot of sense to pursue that idea. And it seems aligned with what the kind of original idea was behind this TAG G group, which explicitly said it didn't want to have its own separate group, but wanted to work through groups like this.
Yeah. Yeah.
I guess I'm curious to hear what others
me too.
think about this.
I think you hit on it. I mean, the active data management plan, I was there for the briefing at Force 2017, and they are, there's actually a couple efforts that are being funded through NSF, and they are early, but what it will do is automate and standardize and have feedback loops, which will need to be understood by others and trained. But I think it's super early.
So where are those groups being, where are those discussions happening that you just mentioned?
Kirsten Leonard has one of the groups, and I'm looking to see who's on to see if I'm going to be talking about people. And the other group is out of CDL with John Chodacki and Stephanie Sims. Stephanie Sims is on the TAG G. Raleigh, did I get the tag letter right?
Yeah, we just talked about that earlier, that we'd mentioned Stephanie earlier. So yeah, that makes sense. Okay.
Yep. And then Fiona Murphy's involved, and Sarah Jones, who's out of DCC in the UK. So they are coming at it from two different angles, but both NSF funded. And there's not for the project that we're working on, that Raleigh's part of, and I'm part of, and many other folks on this call are part of. It's not a direct connection, but we will definitely influence and push folks towards the standardization that will help the active data management plans. And we want to recognize that, which is why Raleigh's saying the difference between a tag and a non-tag is just kind of funny. It's, tags get a whole bunch of support from folks like myself, and there's meetings, and they have certain deliverables, and, there's timelines, and go, and Raleigh's, this is a non-tag, and what that means is we need to recognize the connections, have a liaison, share information, but there's really not that same, there's a 5-month timeline, and the active data management plans are just not going to be anywhere near ready in that 5 months, but we can influence it.
Interesting. So an outcome for your purposes might be actually getting kind of a group together that has the liaisons from these other groups to at least start talking about it and have regular meetings or something like that.
Yeah, and guess what? They picked your meeting, so there you are.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I mean, which is great. But I mean, we do have things we need to do with the Clearinghouse as well. But one of the things we did when we did the Clearinghouse earlier, when we first launched it, was we had subgroups. So there were things that were more active can meet at different times and then just kind of report. It's the way data stewardship works as well. So
did Tag C report in yet? Did you guys talk from the actual data management training tag? Did that one come in yet?
Well, John's on the call and Eric's on the call, so we haven't done much more than talk about it here. But
okay,
but
great.
But we will.
That one's more relevant and more connected to you. And I think having Tag G, the active data management plans, just as a connection, a subgroup, I think that makes more sense. Like, where are you? Maybe an update every couple meetings.
And then, and then that group. But so when would the work happen for the Tag G group? Then that all happens offline, or it's a question of liaisons working together.
Yeah, others are doing that. So Kirsten's group has been around longer, and I'm honestly not certain where she is with that. The folks out of CDL and with Stephanie, though, they are being more vocal and have a clearer path for how folks can participate. So frankly, you should be invited, Nancy, should be invited to see where they are. And we can, and Raleigh can help me remember to do this, but we can make that connection so that you get their updates and actually can make a decision as to what you need to know when you need to know it. And Raleigh's liaison can help that. Raleigh, are you connected on Stephanie's group?
Which group are you referring to for Stephanie?
Stephanie Sims, the Active Data Management Plan group.
Yeah, so okay, I think you came in a little bit late on this meeting, so
I did. I'm so sorry.
I'll provide an explanation again. So basically, several of the people on this call today are here actually because Stephanie suggested during the Enabling Fair kickoff meeting, when this Tag G group, Active DMP group, started forming, that we not form our own kind of independent group, but we work through these existing groups. And so she was the one who initially suggested that we join in with this meeting that we're having right now. And so This is the realization of that. The fact that we're all here is kind of the realization of our intention to coordinate the goals that were discussed by this tag/non-tag during that meeting. To
Yes,
use
but
the venue for that.
well, let me ask my question a little
Sure,
differently.
sure.
Did Stephanie invite anyone from the tag to be part of the active data management plan project?
That she's working on with John at CDL.
Oh, okay. So you're referring not to the tag. Sorry, there's so many different.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we
sorry.
need subscripts.
I hadn't heard anything about that.
Okay.
About that specific.
Yeah,
sheet.
and Shelley, just to follow up on that, I did have a conversation with Stephanie. I don't know, like timeline-wise, how everything is lining up, but she did say that at this point it's probably not necessary for, well, me personally, because I asked if it would be good for me to jump into the RDA meetings, and she says that right now probably not necessary to jump in yet because she could be the one who provides additional information about the group activities if people don't want to join another group, and she could be the liaison into the RDA group. So it sounds like maybe we just need to make sure Stephanie provides regular updates, at least to Raleigh, and Raleigh can share that to the rest of us, sort of.
That would be great. That would be great, because I think that's where G is really they need to let folks know when they're making progress. And it's really tag C that has the more direct connection to this ESIP group.
Okay, Shelley, we have to clarify this now. So I've heard that there's a group with Kirsten, there's a group with CDL, and then there's a group with RDA. Is that right? First, there are 3 different groups that are working on that. Okay.
Yeah.
And not discussing this tag G group from enabling FAIR. So separately from that subgroup, how many groups are there? And what are
Sorry, Nancy, but the common thread is Stephanie, because Stephanie is the head for or the contact person or actually the manager for the CDL
yes, I know.
data management, blah blah blah. And then she's also being in contact with Kirsten, so she relatively know what Kirsten's doing with that group.
Okay.
And then she's also working with RDA's heads, the working group heads, to understand and communicate their activities for active data management plan. And then she's also part of Tag G, supposedly.
This group.
So I think,
yes.
yeah. So I think supposedly she's a common thread, but then she doesn't. Since Raleigh is the chair for Tag G officially, then I think that's what I was saying. Maybe it makes sense for Stephanie to talk with Raleigh more often, and then Raleigh can then be the liaison out of the Tag G to the rest of us.
So what it sounds like is that the need is coordination.
Yeah.
Whether Tag G stands up officially as a group or is just kind of an idea. It seems like there are a lot of different efforts afoot on active data management plans, both as active NSF awards and as RDA groups. And Stephanie seems to be the person who's most tied into those things. And so I'm glad to, maybe I'll set up a phone call with Stephanie just to get an update from her. And then what I kind of think when I hear all this discussion is that the role of this ESIP working group can simply be a place to share those developments of all those various active DMP efforts with the efforts toward data management training, to kind of align those two.
Okay.
And so, in the current work that I'm doing as a AAAS fellow at NSF, I actually have a keen interest in learning more about what's going on in the data management plan world. So I'm glad to be that kind of coordinator to talk to Stephanie and talk to others involved, and to kind of report back on kind of those efforts, if that makes sense.
That makes sense to me. I mean, it also, it does make sense if the Tag C people are interested in joining this group, this meeting, the DMT working ESIP group, then that's the place where you're bringing into the discussions and the reporting what's happening would be the coordination between, or I should say between those two groups as well. So that makes sense to me. I'm not sure I was very clear there, but John, how does that sound? And Eric? I guess what I'm trying to be clear, what I'm trying to say is, yeah, keeping up with what's going on with the active data management plans as a report on kind of the broader context for training, education and training makes sense, because there is definitely a link and relationship there. And by Raleigh joining the calls when he's got something to report based on that topic, it would inform, keep both ESIP group and the TAG C group informed. So
Nancy,
Stop.
I'm sorry.
I'm stopped.
Oh, okay, cool. Sorry, I kind of feel like I was cutting you off. Sorry. I think that makes sense because, again, this is just my discussions based on my discussions with Stephanie while we were at the AGU's meeting. It does sound like the RDA groups are making progress.
Okay.
And because Stephanie's understanding of her work with CDL or at CDL and with the data, a DMP online at UK, she's going to be able to tell us what the collective impact or collective desirable outcome would be as a result of these different activities. So with connection into the data management training working group here with you, it doesn't sound like we should be, say, creating a new workflow or anything like that. So our implementable action would be then to say, there is a set of solutions that's being developed by RDA, CDL, the DCC in the UK, and CRISP, and so on and so forth. And so we are going to help promoting, as part of our implementable step, we're going to help promoting the best practices by identifying training and education opportunities or whatever. And then that therefore would then be in line again back to the Clearinghouse working groups or the training working groups focus, as well as sharing that with the TAGC's objectives.
Yeah.
I think that makes sense. Yeah.
That's it. That's it. What Sophie just said.
I agree 100%.
Well.
Good thing this is being recorded. Down. Yeah.
So I want to encourage us to, if you haven't yet had a conversation with Tag C, that we move to that.
Okay.
What is, maybe John or Shelley could just update us on what Tag C is doing right now?
Sure. Also, what we agreed we would do when we were there was we would start with what training materials, data management training resources do we know off the top of our head that we could have, just go ahead and get them together in a list in a spreadsheet, which I'll put the link into the chat right now. That we could just shove off to the Clearinghouse right away and be inputted into the Clearinghouse. That was the first thing we did. It was this potential small win kind of thing. You know, can we get anything done to start? And so this is what we have so far: 11 entries of things that could be useful for different parts of the research cycle. Haven't had as much input from the people who are at the group as I would like to have seen, but that's what we got so far. And that's as far as we agreed we would do that. And then actually, Eric suggested potentially maybe a use case thing. I don't want to talk too much for Eric. I'll let Eric discuss that if he'd like. But that's as far as we got, and then we need to talk about what we might do afterwards.
Yeah, I think that one of the goals was, after we start collecting some of what's already out there, rather than trying to reinvent the wheel, would be to arrange it in, as John mentioned, as which resources belong in which parts of the research cycle. So if you're actually looking for a resource for your data, you're just starting your data management plan, a resource that's for data stewardship and maintenance, long after that's not really going to be helpful for you. So trying to arrange resources in ways that are most useful, visually or, as part of a breakdown that's much easier to use than a lot of the tools that are out there right now.
Mm-hmm. So linking it to one of the research life cycles.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Or multiple. For
right.
If the tool covers multiple, then it would have multiple tags or whatever. But just by mapping that out, those resources become more useful immediately after they hit a map like that.
That'd be wonderful to do, because one of the things we can do within the Clearinghouse is to associate different resources with what we call educational frameworks or frameworks, and some of the resources are associated with USGS's take on the research lifecycle. Some are associated with Data One's. We've got Data Preservation Network has it's not a framework, and that we're kind of doing a loosey-goosey with the framework idea, but a concept, I mean, but in other words, it's a way to sort of collect and organize resources on that with that very same idea of where should it fit within some way of thinking about research data. So if if part of what Tag C Group would do would be to map what's out there to those different frameworks or life cycles, then there is a way already within the Clearinghouse to associate to not only to the framework, to the steps within it. So that's fairly straightforward to do. The other one that's we just added is the World Data Centers collected some resources together and associated them with the Trusted Core Repository requirements. So that's
that's important.
Yeah. So they have done that work, and I've been working on getting those in, but it's the analysis of what's out there to those kinds of frameworks and steps within it is really helpful, I think, for people, and it takes a village to do that for sure. So.
May I ask a question about that content? Is that for a repository? Is that the audience? Because we have another tag that would be interested in that.
What do you mean, that content? The content is
World Data System, Core Trust Seal.
The data that they put together are links to educational resources. And for those resources, they've associated the requirements that match them. So, for instance, if you look at the Clearinghouse and do a search for soils mapping, you would, as you look at the resources that are there, you will see in the keyword area in this particular case, they're associated with that WDS framework. And within the framework, when you look at the record itself, it's associated with the keywords that are the requirements.
Okay, I think what you just said is those are repository requirements, and so it would be valuable to repositories, people who work at repositories.
Well, no, I mean it's preparing your data to make it to deposit it into a repository, but that's part of data management, right?
Okay, I'll take a look. I'll take a look at it. And okay, thank you.
Yeah, so I mean, in other words, it's associated with keywords because, so for instance, one of the requirements is data storage and security, or copyright and ethics, confidentiality, and all of those are keywords that are by which you could search for a resource. Anyway, yeah, go ahead and look at it and see. But at any rate, I mean, the point is that I think that there definitely is a work together that we could work together on that with the Tag C Group efforts. So, okay, so in honor of the fact that it's just about the hour, any other comments? So it sounds like what we ended up coming up with is that there is an affinity between what sort of the bigger context of what this ESIP group is doing, and by association, the data stewardship group, which is a little bit broader, and the tag G group in the sense that when the work that needs to be done by the community to make active data management plans more enabled, then and resources are either created or located, that's when the association comes in to this group, and Raleigh will be the coordinator to do that. Does that sound right?
Yes, that sounds right to me.
Okay.
And I really, again, appreciate you accommodating us here.
Sure. No,
I hope it could be mutually beneficial.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, if we could get some, we can talk about that. So, but then the other thing to come out of the meeting is that the tag C group, I think, fits very well with this group. So maybe John and Eric and I can talk together soon about, how to pursue that in future meetings. Does that make sense?
Yes.
That sounds fine.
Okay. John, are you and Eric going to be at AGU?
I'm sorry, Sam, I won't be there.
Won't be there. Eric.
So where is the meeting? Is this
New Orleans?
the DC? Oh, probably not then.
Okay, but the ESIP meeting in Bethesda, because that's a place we could get together too. And
yeah, certainly if we were able to meet around the meeting, if it didn't require attendance, I could definitely do.
Okay.
I'm local.
Okay.
For that.
Okay.
For sure.
Well, let's follow up offline about that, because I think that would be really helpful.
I can give you quick information on that.
Okay.
It will not require attendance, and we have an entire day on January 8th at the Bethesda facility for this project and these efforts.
So that's
Fantastic.
You can plan on.
That's this. Now, Sophie said there was something on the 7th. So this is the same one. This is the second in-person meeting, or?
Oh, Sophie, it's the 8th.
Okay.
It's the Monday.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, the one
It's going to be at that same area in North Bethesda.
That's right.
Okay. Well, we'll clarify all of this and send it out. Yeah, because we had not heard about that. So anyway, I think any other questions or comments? Thanks very much for everyone.
And Nancy, thanks for doing this. I appreciate you understanding the connections and seeing the value. So thank you so much.
You're welcome. Good. All right. Well, great. Well, then, if you're interested in following more about what we're doing, there is the listserv that you can join. And this kind of thing will be reported on there. So if you want to join that, let me know, and I'll add you, and we'll pursue the topics more in the future.
All right.
Great.
So, thank
you so much, Nancy.
All right.
Thanks.
All right. Thanks, Carl, too, for joining. I'll talk with you soon. All right. Bye-bye. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.
I had to unmute.
Oh, yeah. Oh, okay. Good. Yeah. So I wanted to talk more about IMLS connection there, but I think that would have confused things more anyway. So.
And with my late arrival, I wasn't able to help at all, as you were already closing out your summary. And it's like, okay, just let sleeping dogs lie.
Okay. Yeah. I think the resolution was good that it's not as connected as the other group. So, but if we can get those folks involved in working with us, and I think it ties right into what we want to do with IMLS too. So we'll have to think about how to keep that in mind. So, okay, sounds good. Did you see the draft letters I sent to you?
I did. I've been plowing through my emails.
Okay.
So I was going to get those looked at today.
Sounds good. All right. Thanks.
Cool.
All right.
Okay,
Talk to you soon. Okay. Bye-bye.